you've done your research on Asheville, you love what you're hearing, you love what you're seeing, it all sounds good. You maybe even looked up home prices on Zillow, so you know what to expect. You know that it's not the cheapest area to buy a property in and live in, but you are determined. What you don't know, however, is how much it's actually gonna cost you to buy a property in the Asheville area and the whole Western North Carolina. And I'm not just talking about the prices of properties in the Asheville area. Welcome back to OG Living in Asheville channel. Hi, this is elenakovrigin with ℊ𝕠𝕟𝕟𝕼 Realty, powered by eXp Realty here in Asheville, North Carolina. My team and I are helping dozens of people relocate to the area, and if you need help figuring out if this is the right area for you, figuring out how you're gonna make it, how you're gonna do it with you and your family or just by yourself, I got our contact information down in the description: phone call, email, calendar link to schedule a personal phone call, Zoom meeting, or in-person meeting. So follow it and we'll get you started. We all know by now, unless you're new here, then listen up. Asheville is not the cheapest place to live. The cost of living in Asheville is higher than in most North Carolina towns and cities. Median sales price in Asheville in the whole metro area is in the mid 400s. So your money might not go as far as it would in some other areas. The houses here cost more. So that is number one. And number two, there are certain expenses that are associated with the actual purchase of the house. Now, good news is that some of those expenses can be paid by a credit card. Some cannot be paid by a credit card. It has to be cash, basically, or a debit card, savings account. It cannot be credit card. So if you're a cash buyer, you would need to have obviously 100% of how much you are offering to buy the house, plus some more money to follow through with the purchase of the property and close on the property. Which, by the way, if you're a cash buyer, you would need to have proof of funds to make an offer. Without it, sellers will not even look at your offer. Proof of funds can be bank statement showing your name and enough funds to cover the purchase of that property. It can be a statement from your combination of different banks and different accounts. It can also be a letter from your financial institution saying that you have enough funds to cover the purchase of that certain property. If you're getting a loan, then it's basically between you and the financial institution, the lender or a bank, how much down payment you're gonna have to make. But even if you're financing 10% of the purchase price, whatever amount you are financing, you would need to have pre-approval letter when you are making an offer. Just like proof of funds, sellers will not look at your offer without pre-approval letter or proof of funds, even if you are financing a very small amount. Now, some sellers will actually care about how much you are financing, but more than that, they care about how much skin in the game you have. And I'm gonna talk about it next. So in North Carolina, every seller expects two types of deposits when they receive an offer. The first deposit is due diligence money deposit. Due diligence money deposit is basically non-refundable. There are only two cases when you as a buyer can get it back, unless your realtor is that good and they can negotiate anything out in certain situations. So due diligence money deposit is due at the signing of the contract, not when you make an offer, but when you make an offer, the seller accepts the offer, they sign the offer, and all the parties know that you are under contract. That's when the money is due. Due diligence money deposit, just like everything else in real estate, is negotiable, right? You can offer $0, but I guarantee you they're gonna come back and ask for something, especially if they have a good listing agent. And also it depends on the list price and how much you're offering and all that. Some houses you might get by a smaller amount, some other houses, especially if it's a hot property, and by hot I mean if there are multiple offers, if there's a lot of interest, if the house has been on the market for 2 hours, don't lowball it. Expect the counteroffer with seller asking for some due diligence money deposit. Now, some listing agents I know expect around 1% due diligence money deposit. So let's say if you are making an offer on a $500,000 house, they might ask for $5,000 due diligence money deposit. Now that, I have to say, that doesn't really happen unless it's a hot property, there are multiple offers, and back in the day, I know I sound like a grandma, just 2 years ago, $5,000 wouldn't even cut it, okay? I've seen due diligence money deposits that were tens of thousands of dollars. These days, you might get by offering less. I just had somebody who went on the contract for only $500, and I was sure they're gonna come back and ask for more, but they didn't, so we got lucky. You don't want to offer a lot or more than you have to right off the start, but again, you have to read the situation, or your agent needs to be able to read the situation and advise you how much money you need to offer to realistically win the contract. So due diligence money deposit can be anywhere from $0 to tens of thousands of dollars. If the property's been on the market for, a month, 2 months, you might be able to get away with $500 on a $500,000 property. Anywhere around $1,000-$2,000 sounds great to a lot of sellers these days, but this is the deposit that is non-refundable. The seller gets to keep it pretty much 98% of the time. The seller also, you have to understand that the seller in North Carolina cannot walk away from the contract like you can as a buyer. You as a buyer really can do whatever you want. You can walk away at any point. You just change your mind. Something came up on the inspection, or you picked a different house or different property, or you just changed your mind, moving to the area, Seller, once they are under contract with you, they are stuck with you unless you terminate the contract. They cannot terminate the contract. So that's the only compensation that they have for potentially lost time and opportunity. Now, the second type of deposit is earnest money deposit. Earnest money deposit is refundable. It is refundable within your due diligence period, though. If you terminate the contract within your due diligence period, you get your second deposit back. If you terminate the contract after the end of due diligence but before the closing, you will lose your second deposit. Earnest money deposit is traditionally around 1%, but really everyone knows that that's not the money that really matters. Both of these deposits, just like down payment, just like closing cost with your lender, have to be cash. You cannot pay for them with your credit card. You have to write a check or do a wire, but this is the money that will come out of your bank account. Now, North Carolina is an attorney state, meaning in order to close on a real estate property in North Carolina, especially with the lender, you must use an attorney. Attorneys in North Carolina prepare all your documents, they do title search, they prepare all the documents, they do payoffs and all that. Typically, here in this area, the cost to the buyer is around $1,200 to $1,400. So attorney fees is basically part of your closing cost. And again, it is between you and your lender how much your actual closing cost is. That includes some other lender fees and all that good stuff from the lender. But be prepared to pay around or anywhere between $5,000 and $8,000 depending on the price of the property. The money will be coming out of your checking account, not credit cards. So that is can be a hard part for a lot of people because they just don't have savings or don't have enough money that they saved for the purchase of the property. So if you're looking at the two deposits, just looking at two deposits, it can be easily, on a $500,000 property, it can be easily $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 that will will be gone out of your checking account. So let's recap. So far, you need to have enough money in your checking account to pay your due diligence money deposit. That can be, let's be realistic, anywhere between $500 to $2,000 on the average price property. And earnest money deposit, that, let's say on the $500,000 it's $5,000, so we're looking at the higher end $7,000. Then attorney fees, let's take again a higher end, $1,400. And closing costs between you and the lender, let's say $6,000. So that really adds up. And I always want to be upfront, and I always want to keep it real. And I don't want anybody to have illusions that they can swing it, they can make it, even if with prices being so high. The cost of actually buying a house is pretty high. But that's not all. Once you go on the contract, I highly, highly, highly recommend everyone do inspections. North Carolina is a state where you cannot really waive inspections, meaning nobody will care. Like, seller will not care if you're waiving inspections. You have your due diligence period to do inspections, to do your due diligence. It's up to you whether you want to spend the money on inspections and do your due diligence or not. The seller can care less. You cannot waive them. It's not gonna make your offer better or worse. They just don't care, because in North Carolina, every property, unless it's new construction, is sold as is, and the seller does not have to negotiate anything once you go on the contract. Now, a lot of times they still do, because depending on the type of issue, it will be the same issue that the next buyer will have, right? And they will have to deal with this issue eventually. So a lot of times they still do, but I just always like to prepare everyone. The seller does not have to negotiate. I always recommend doing at least general inspection and radon inspection. To just do a general inspection on the average sized home of 1,500 to 2,000 square foot house, expect to pay about $450. Radon inspection is another one that I always recommend, because radon is radioactive gas. It is found in all parts of North Carolina. It's not a matter of if you have it, it's a matter of how much you have it. You cannot smell, see, feel, taste radon, but it might be there and you wouldn't even know. And they say that radon is the second leading cause of lung cancer after smoke. It doesn't matter how big or small the house is. Radon testing is around $125. It takes about 2 days to do the test, and then you get a reading. It is relatively inexpensive to mitigate, so I always highly recommend people do radon inspection so you don't glow in the dark. Pest inspection. Now, pests and termites in particular are not as widespread here than they are maybe in some other parts of the country like Florida, but I always recommend doing a pest inspection. And you can expect to pay anywhere between $100 and $125 for pest inspection. You think that's it? No. So in this area, we have a lot of properties that are not on city sewer and city water. And what they are on is septic, private septic, and private well. When the house is also on a private well and a private septic, I always highly recommend doing septic inspection and not only well inspection, but well water test. Septic inspection costs around $600, $650. That will include pump. If somebody tells you that they're gonna inspect without pumping, it's a scam. Well, I mean, it's not really a scam, but this is not a very good or reliable way to inspect septic tanks. You gotta pump it and then look at what's going on. I mean, that only makes sense, right? So the pump and inspection costs around $600, $650. Now, some properties here in this area are older. I had a client who ordered septic inspection the septic people came in, they were digging, and they could not find or even get to the septic tank. The house was built in the 70s, and the septic tank was few feet deep. So they had to come back with an excavator, excavate the whole thing, lift that big concrete lid off the septic, pump it, then inspect it. Guess what? The cost of that was over $1,000 for them to come back with an excavator, excavate, pump, inspect. And like I said, if the property is also on a well, which some properties can be on both well and septic. Some properties might have city sewer and well, or the other way around. So it varies, okay? If the property is also on a well, I highly recommend doing well inspection and well water test. Well inspection is around $350, and they look at the well, how good the well is, the pressure and little components of the well, and all that good stuff. Well, water test looks at if the water has any contamination. A basic water scan costs like $120, and it only looks at a few different things. I recommend doing premium water scan that costs $285, but it looks at, I want to say, a dozen different things in the well water. And it's mind-blowing, but from my experience, it seems like a lot of homeowners live there for years and never test their well water, because we find all kinds of stuff in well water. And that needs to be treated and mitigated so that you have safe drinking water that is clean and that's not going to make you sick down the road. Now, let's say you've done all these inspections, and they can easily add up to a few $1,000s. And then general inspection revealed some structural issues with foundation. What do? I highly recommend getting a structural engineer come look at whatever's wrong with this and give you an estimate so that you know what you are buying into. Structural engineers can cost a few $100s just to come out and look at it. In fact, a lot of other contractors, let's say something came up on the inspection report about broken windows, or windows that lost seal, or siding that's damaged, or the roof needs some attention. A lot of contractors that agree to come out and take a look and give you a quote cost additional money, not maybe as much as other inspections, but they're not going to come out for free and give you an estimate. Now, all homes, regardless of where they at, have HVACs, heating, venting, air and cooling system. That's what it stands for. HVAC is, unless it's new, they have wear and tear. And I always recommend doing HVAC inspection as well. Regular inspectors do not, they do look at all the components of the house, but not as much in depth as HVAC contractor would. So I always highly recommend doing HVAC inspection on top of regular inspection. Some people opt out to wait and see if general inspection reveals anything to spend more money on more inspection. Some people just don't do it at all, which I don't recommend, because it can come back and bite you. Just like septic inspection. If you don't inspect it and something comes up and something happens after you moved in, it's your problem. And it can be thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars that you would need to spend on septic tank, septic field, repairing and whatnot, or replacing. And I have one more thing for you that, last but not least, so to speak, and certainly not the least expensive, survey. I always highly recommend doing a survey, and surveys can cost a lot of money. I don't know about other areas, but here in Western North Carolina, surveys cost, it depends on the size, right? But over $1,000 for a typical quarter of an acre, fifth of an acre property, easy, every day, any day. What surveys do is they not only mark property corners and tell you exactly where property boundaries are. Let's say you want to put a fence, you want to, I don't know, you want to do whatever you want to do on your property and you want to know where your property lines are. They will show where there is an encroachment, and it shouldn't be your problem. If there's an encroachment, it should be on the seller, and the seller needs to take care of it before the closing. But also, and that's not discussed a lot or enough, I don't hear anybody really talk about it, but I like to scare my clients. Really, I just want my clients to avoid mistakes and headache and stress down the road, as well as losing money. But if you don't have a survey in your name at the time of the closing, then title company that issues title insurance on your property may not cover any disputes associated with property lines, boundaries, and stuff like that down the road. So I didn't want to scare anybody with this video, but it's just been coming up more and more with people coming here thinking that this is it, this is the area, and just realizing that it's actually going to cost a lot of money to buy a property, and they may not be ready now, and they need to do some homework, maybe save some more money or move money around, sell a property and whatnot to be able to move here and buy a property that they want. I hope it was useful, and I'll post some more links right here with some more videos about what it's like to live in Asheville. If you have any questions, my team and I are here to help with any questions about relocation. We're assisting you relocating to the area, and I will see you next time.